Namaste, and welcome to our continuing series on the life divine with our beloved Ranga. We are now in the chapter 7, the knowledge and the ignorance.
So this is a new chapter. Last time we just read the first paragraph. So why is he calling this chapter the knowledge and the ignorance? Now I want to go back to the previous chapter. And the previous chapter was reality and the illusion. So there is a problem there, and he has solved the problem, and then he comes to this. So what is that problem? Something that you are taking for absolute reality, suddenly one day, when you are in a different consciousness, you see it as unreal. How is it that something which was real has suddenly turned out to be unreal? So he has to analyze and find out where the problem is. So, as we discussed last time, in any operation of knowledge, there are three elements that come in. There is the one who wants to know. Let's call him the perceiver. There is something which you want to know. Let's call that the percept. And there is the knowledge that joins the two of you, and that we can call the perception. So, the problem is with whom? Is it with the percept, or is it with the perceiver, or is it a problem of the perception? So, after a detailed analysis of very, very strong and rigid logic, very rigorous logic, he comes to the conclusion that there is nothing wrong with the reality. It is always a reality. The perceiver, the individual, even what the Buddhists may say, that there is no individual, he does say that the individual is real. So the reality is real, the individual is real, so there must be a problem with the perception. And what is the perception? How do you perceive something you want to see? You use instruments. At our level, we are using the instruments of senses and mind. The animal mostly uses only the senses, very little of the mind. But in man, the percepts, the perceptions that come from outside have to be interpreted. That's why the mind comes in. Take a newborn baby, he is hearing sounds, he is hearing his mother calling him, he is seeing his mother clearly, he knows everything, but does he understand a single thing? No, because the baby's interpretation, the capacity to interpret the sounds and the sights and the smells is not yet developed. So in man, you have the senses give you data, and that data has to be interpreted by the mind, the physical part of the mind. So there is a problem with the perception. So what are the instruments you are using? It's very obvious to everybody that the senses we are using here are defective. My eyes are defective. I can't see as well as an eagle can. I can't smell or hear sounds like a dog can. So naturally, my senses are limited. And if my senses are limited, I am not seeing the reality. I am seeing only a limited part of the reality. So if you raise your consciousness, you are using different senses. And there is a gradation. From the lowest level of the senses, you go up, you start going higher and higher and higher. These instruments of knowledge go on changing. And the problem is with the knowledge that you are collecting through your instruments of knowledge.
But it's a gradation.
It's a gradation. And that gradation at the lowest level is we have only our senses. And the senses are not giving us the true picture. That is ignorance. You are not seeing the reality. As you keep going higher and higher in consciousness, you start seeing more and more of the reality. So, we will define what is knowledge and what is ignorance. So, the ignorance is when you see multiplicity and you take that to be a fact. I am seeing you, I am seeing that. I don't see any relation between all of these things. I see you sitting outside, I see all these people. There is no connection between the two. I don't see any connection. You are in ignorance, avidya. As you keep going higher and higher in consciousness, actually, Srimdev will tell you also that there are 7 planes of consciousness, and the lowest 3 planes of consciousness, the matter, life, and mind, are the lowest level in the planes of existence. If you are identified with your body, your life, and your mind, you are necessarily in ignorance. The ego plays a part, and you are not seeing the reality. As soon as your mind becomes silent and you go above the mind, and you are not identified with your body, your vital, and your mind, you are beginning to get knowledge. You start seeing the oneness of things. And what is the oneness of things? Take any species. Take cats, for instance. There was an American lady here who had 30 cats in her house. All of them separate. But she is seeing them as separate. Is she seeing something common to all of them, which is the catness? No. Knowing is one thing and understanding by the mind is another thing. So when you see the oneness of things, you are in knowledge. You can define it that way. Or you can also define it this way. So long as you are identified with your body, mind, life, you are in ignorance. And if you are not identified with your body, mind, life, you know that your body, mind, life are only instruments given to you for your experience in the world. And you know that you are something, an entity above the body, mind, life, you are beginning to get knowledge. So the problem, what was an ontological problem? Ontology is the study of reality. So we were studying reality and seeing where is this, what is the nature of this reality, how is it suddenly becoming unreal. So we were examining in the previous chapter the ontological problem. But now it turns out to be that it is not an ontological problem, but an epistemological knowledge. Epistemology is the study of knowledge, how we get knowledge. Okay? So this is why the chapter now is from reality and the illusion is the knowledge and the ignorance. So this is the chapter.
So shall we read the second paragraph?
Yes. And now in the first para he has told you that there are 7 planes of consciousness. I'll do one thing. Very short summary of the first para. I'll just read it out. Because some of them were not there last time.
Yes.
This is my own language. I am just summarizing what Srimdev said. We have completed our survey of the 7 principles of existence, all of which are intimately connected in essence. The upper hemisphere, Sat, Chit, Ananda, and Gnosis. Srimdev uses the word Gnosis for supermind. So this is the upper hemisphere. The lower hemisphere is mind, life, and body. So long as you are in the lower hemisphere, ignorance. When you go to the upper hemisphere, even the lowest level of the upper hemisphere, you are in beginning to get knowledge. Okay? So, then, there are 7 planes. These 7 planes are essentially one, even if phenomenally formulated in 7 variations. We gave the example of ice, water, water vapor. Totally different forms and yet essentially one. So, matter is God. Okay. Consciousness is also God. Life is God. All these are the same. And what are they? What is that sameness? Satchidananda. Satchidananda is a combination of consciousness, substance, Chit, substance, Sat, and Ananda. But they are not 3 things combined into one. They are one which break up into 3 later on. Their characteristics are inseparable from each other. Sat, Chit, Ananda. As they come down, the law of one becoming the many operates and they break up into different things. So at our level, substance is different, consciousness is different, life is different. Okay? Now, the supermind, with its power of Maya, supermind is the lowest of the higher hemisphere. Sat, Chit, Shakti, Ananda, supermind. Supermind is the fourth from the highest level, fourth from the lowest level. It's exactly the middle. It's the connecting link between the upper hemisphere and the lower hemisphere. Don't think that the supermind is the highest plane of consciousness.
Is it the creative link?
That's right. It is that which manifests the unmanifested. It is the supermind that does that. Just like the prism, the white light which is unmanifest, it breaks up into 7 colors and it becomes available to the senses. It gets manifested. So that is the supermind. But as yet, that supermind has not descended yet into the earth. Theoretically. In 1956, Mother and Sri Ramji were able to bring down that supermind, and it has gone into the matter and planted itself there. Now we are waiting for it to blossom. When you put a seed into the soil, it doesn't blossom immediately. You have to give it the right conditions. Maybe the right conditions are not ready yet in the world. There's too much of falsehood, too much of
Ego.
too much of everything that is not divine. So, then, supermind, with its power of Maya, which is a creative faculty, has expressed itself in utter Ananda as an artist. This Ramdev, who writes prose, is now writing poetry in prose. He is a poet par excellence, but here he is going into a poetic image. He says, supermind is expressing itself in utter Ananda as an artist. He has painted this vast universe, which is infinitely variegated on the canvas of time and space. So he takes time and space as canvas and he starts painting the 7 colors. Okay? So, time is the warp and space is the woof. All this vast creation, however multitudinous it may appear, is really one in essence, a supreme reality which has objectivized itself in infinite forms and colors is this universe. This is what he has said in the first para. Now we can go to the next para. Okay? I am reading the next para. Page 514. But here, there is a world based upon an original inconscience. Here, consciousness has formulated itself in the figure of an ignorance laboring towards knowledge. I'll read the whole para first and then we'll come back to the explanations. We have seen that there is no essential reason either in the nature of being itself or in the original character and fundamental relations of its 7 principles for this intrusion of ignorance, of discord into the harmony, of darkness into the light, of division and limitation into the self-conscious infinity of the divine creation. For we can conceive, and since we can conceive, the divine can still more conceive, and since there is the conception, there must be somewhere the execution, the creation actual or intended, a universal harmony into which these contrary elements do not enter. What are the contrary elements we will discuss? The Vedic seers were conscious of such a divine self-manifestation and looked on it as a greater world beyond this lesser, a freer and wider plane of consciousness and being, the truth creation of the Creator, which they described as the seat or own home of the truth, as the vast truth, or the truth, the right, the vast, Satyamritam Brihat, or again as a truth hidden by a truth where the sun of knowledge finishes his journey and unyokes his horses, where the 1,000 rays of consciousness stand together so that there is that one, the supreme form of the divine being. But this world in which we live seemed to them to be a mingled weft in which truth is disfigured by an abundant falsehood. Anritasya bhure. Here, the one light has to be born by its own vast force out of an initial darkness or sea of inconscience. Immortality and Godhead have to be built up out of an existence which is under the yoke of death, ignorance, weakness, suffering, and limitation. This self-building they figured as a creation by man in himself of that other world or high-ordered harmony of infinite being which already exists, perfect and eternal in the divine infinite. The lower is for us the first condition of the higher. The darkness is the dense body of the light. The inconscient guards in itself all the concealed superconscient. The powers of the division and falsehood hold from us, but also for us, and to be conquered from them, the riches and substance of the unity and the truth in their cave of subconscious. This was, in their view, expressed in the highly figured enigmatic language of the early mystics, the sense and justification of man's actual existence and his conscious or unconscious Godward effort, his conception so paradoxical at first sight in a world which seems its very opposite, his aspiration so impossible to a superficial view in a creature so ephemeral, weak, ignorant, limited, towards a plenitude of immortality, knowledge, power, bliss, a divine and imperishable existence. So, what Srimad is saying is that when this manifestation takes place, there is a gradation. Light becomes darkness. Consciousness becomes unconsciousness. Ananda becomes death and suffering, and life becomes death. Why does this happen? Because manifestation implies form. Without a form, you can't have anything manifested. If I have a thought in my mind, it is unmanifested. It remains unmanifested. If I want to manifest it, I have to use language, words, which are limitations. So when limitations are there is necessarily imperfection. Something limited can never be perfect. So the highest becomes the lowest, and they seem to be opposites. Consciousness becomes unconsciousness. They are actually symmetrical mirror images of each other. There are very, very common elements are there between the superconscient and the inconscient. That is infinite, this is infinite.
Okay. But what we have read does not include adverse forces, of which Mother speaks about.
The adverse forces come in the evolution. In the involution, there are no adverse forces. When you are starting from consciousness, knowledge, power, divinity. How can you go wrong?
Right.
So when you are coming down, there is a diminution and an apparent distortion, but no falsehood. It comes down, and there is the involution, and these are mirror images of each other. Light, darkness, both are infinite, both are one, both are potentially full of everything, okay, that is going to be manifested. From there, all the 7 colors will come out, and from here also, when the evolution takes place, all the 7 colors will come out. So infinite, eternal, both, and that's a common. But they are opposites, mirror images of each other. Okay? So, that is why the darkness comes in here. So, the Vedic seers saw that in the manifestation, this is the field of action for man. He has to now build in himself the higher planes of consciousness.
But in the darkness, there is also light.
There is light hidden,
Hidden, yes.
just as in the higher superconscious also. All these things are there: life, mind, matter, supermind, all are there but hidden. So they start manifesting. And when they manifest, they all appear one by one, and the planes are there. But at the lowest level, when you are there, potentially everything is there, but you have to develop it. Just as the tree is potentially there in the seed. You take the seed, you don't see the tree. You have to develop it. You have to give the right conditions: sunlight, water, the right conditions of the soil. Then it will sprout. So, that is what he's saying here. I'll read each sentence, now you'll understand what he's saying. Okay? But here, that means in the physical world, there is a world based upon an original inconscience. So, in the physical world, there is inconscience. No consciousness in matter. Is it absolutely true? It seems to be true, but there is a seed of consciousness in inconscience. You can't say that matter is zero consciousness. You have to say that there is 0.0000000 consciousness. There is a slight amount of consciousness which has to grow. And that growth comes by man's effort towards the highest. This is aspiration. Okay, so here consciousness has formulated itself in the figure of an ignorance laboring towards knowledge. Note the word, it has figured itself in an ignorance. Okay? So, the divine has come down, but there is no distortion. But when you are using instruments of knowledge at this level, ignorance comes in. You are not seeing the difference. The proof is that man in his normal consciousness is an ignorance. But when man develops his consciousness and rises to the higher planes of consciousness and does not identify himself with body-mind life, he has rejected body-mind life and he has gone up and he is in knowledge. But a yogi can come down into his body-mind life and yet be full of knowledge. That is what the Gita wants, and that is what Sri Ranga also wants. Normally in yoga until now, the idea was to leave this world of ignorance and inconscience and go up. Your soul goes up and remains in the heavens. Brahmaloka, Tapoloka, Anandaloka, all sorts of lokas are there. You can select what you want to and live there permanently. But Sri Aurobindo idea is that this world should not be left permanently in ignorance. It has to be transformed. And that is why he wants to bring down the supermind into, and he did that. Now it's only a question of time.
Of time, yes. Now Nolini tells us that the Superman is already here. He said it may be you, it may be me, jokingly.
Who says that?
Nolini.
Well, Mother says afterwards that before the Superman, there will be a
Surong.
intermediary. Yeah.
Yes.
An intermediary who will be somewhat like the yogi. A yogi is far superior to a man, and the Superman will be far superior to the yogi. Okay? I go back to the text. We have seen that there is no essential reason either in the nature of being means substance, existence itself, in the original character and fundamental relations of its 7 principles, for this intrusion of ignorance, of discord into the harmony, of darkness into the light, of division and limitation into the self-conscious infinity of the divine creation. What Sri Aurobindo is saying is that the divine has manifested himself. But there is no falsehood in what he has created. There is. It's hiding behind. It is hidden. But when you are in this level and you are in ignorance, you don't see the reality. You have to develop and see the reality. There is no unreality here. You have to only see it. That's the whole idea. So he's saying very clearly, there is no essential reason, either in the nature of being itself or in the original character and fundamental relations of its 7 principles, for the intrusion of ignorance.
And he uses intrusion.
Intrusion. Now, the point is this, that if there was permanently imperfection here, Sri Aurobindo's idea of transformation of nature and the advent of Superman would not be possible. Sri Aurobindo wants a divine life on earth itself here. And that is possible if the conditions will allow the divine to manifest. There is a resistance from the inconscience, but it can be conquered. That's what he is saying. Okay? We have seen that there is no essential reason either for the nature of being itself, for the intrusion of ignorance, of discord into the harmony, of darkness into the light, of division and limitation into the self-conscious infinity of the divine creation. For we can conceive, and since we can, the divine can still more conceive, and since there is the conception, there must be somewhere the execution, the creation actual or intended, a universal harmony into which these contrary elements do not enter. We have to see what are the contrary elements and what he means by conception. It's very interesting. I can conceive of something. Can it correspond to reality? May not, because I am at the lowest level. But if divine conceives of something, it becomes a reality immediately, because he is in perfect divine conditions. So, if he can conceive, it can become absolutely a reality, and if it's a reality, it is manifesting itself. For we can conceive, we read that. And divine also can conceive. And since there is conception, there must somewhere be the execution. At our level, that is not possible. If I conceive that I want to build a house, it can become a reality in time and space, but not necessarily. But when the divine is conceiving, that's why it is said that the world is a thought of God. It's a thought of God. But our thought can remain unmanifested. But his thought will manifest immediately into reality. And into what? Frame, time and space. Okay, so a universal harmony into which these contrary elements do not enter. Now, what are the contrary elements? They are the dualities. When I'll take only one example, I'll take light. Now, light is manifesting itself. But when it is manifesting itself, two things can happen. It is creating, it becomes subject to the law of one becoming the many. So when light is making itself here, manifesting itself, it doesn't manifest itself only in one intensity. It manifests itself in so many different intensities. So you have a 100-watt bulb if you want, 50-watt bulb, 25-watt bulb, it goes on, 0-watt bulb, but here is a 2000-watt bulb, 10,000 infinite. And this are also infinite. Now, if it is going lesser and lesser and lower, you have dualities. You have light and you have darkness. So, take any principle and the same thing happens.
Seeming darkness.
Yeah. But they are dualities.
Yes.
They're really not there, but you seem to see them as duality. When you are in the physical world, you are seeing duality, these contrary elements. Now, Srivda is saying, actually these contrary elements do not enter. But when you are in ignorance, you see dualities. So you can also define knowledge as not seeing dualities, seeing only oneness. And ignorance when you are seeing dualities and taking them to be true. Okay? So the next one. The Vedic seers were conscious of such a divine self-manifestation and looked on it as a greater world beyond this lesser. The greater world, higher hemisphere, Lesser, the lower hemisphere. The lesser world is matter, life, mind, what we see here. The higher hemisphere, Sat, Chit, Ananda, supermind. A freer and wider plane of consciousness and being, the truth creation of the Creator, which they described as the seat or own home of the truth. Svedami is the word used in Sanskrit. Okay, the truth as a vast truth, or the truth, the right, the vast. So, the truth, Satyam, Ritam, Brihat. These are the words used, and also they have given Sanskrit also in a footnote. Sadanam Ritasya. Sadanam Ritasya, the home of truth. Svedame, its own home. Ritasya. Ritasya Brihate, Ritam Satyam Brihat. That is the nature of the supermind. It is truth, it is Satyam, it is Ritam, the right, and it is infinite. That's the supermind. Or again, as a truth hidden by a truth, where the sun of knowledge. Now, the sun is the symbol of the supermind. Okay, and that's why Srimad is describing what is written in the Vedas. Where the sun of knowledge finishes his journey and unyokes his horses, where the 1,000 rays of consciousness stand together, so that there is that one, the supreme form of the divine being. But this world in which we live seemed to them to be a mingled weft in which truth is disfigured by an abandoned falsehood. Anritasya bhure. Here, the one light has to be born by its own vast force out of an initial darkness or sea of inconscience. The sea of inconscience is also there. Apraketam salilam. That's the word used in the Rig Veda. Okay, so supreme form. But this word, Anritasya bhure. Here, the one light has to be born by its own vast force out of an initial darkness or sea of inconscience. Immortality and Godhead have to be built up out of an existence which is under the yoke of death, ignorance, weakness, suffering, limitation. There is a description of our world. Death, ignorance, weakness, suffering, limitation.
But seen by the Vedic seers.
Yes, this was seen by the Vedic seers. We are also seeing only the lower part. We are not seeing the higher. Okay, so this self-building, they figured as a creation by man in himself of that other world or high-ordered harmony of infinite being, which already exists, perfect and eternal in the divine infinite. The lower is for us the first condition of the higher. The darkness is the dense body of the light. The inconscient guards in itself all the concealed superconscient. The powers of the division and falsehood hold from us, but also for us. Now note that.
Yes.
Hold from us. They don't allow us to see, but also it is possible for us to see. Okay? Hold from us, but also for us, and to be conquered from them. What? The riches, the substance of the unity and the truth in their cave of subconscious. You can realize the divine even here itself, without leaving the earth. Okay, so this was in their view expressed in the highly figured enigmatic language of the early mystics. He referred to the Vedas, where they use words which we don't understand, because when they speak of Saraswati, what is Saraswati they are speaking of? There is no Saraswati here. There is only Saraswati. So if you have the experience, and that's how Srirangam could make out the meaning of the Vedas. By his experience, he could get the hints of what is being said. Okay? Indra, Varuna, okay? All these, what do they represent actually? So the language is very mystical. And in India, we have worshipped the Vedas and know that they are the highest knowledge. But slowly the knowledge disappeared, but only the worship remained. And in India today, many attempts have been there to explain the Vedas by the Westerners, by our own Indians, by several Indian scholars, even what's his name? I forget his name now. He tried, but Srirendra has come the closest, and even Srirendra has not been able to translate the whole thing. Because, first of all, the language has changed over 5,000 years, and when the language has changed, the words used there have lost their meaning here. So, but the words are common, and we know that the Indo-Aryan languages are common. So, where he could not get the Vedic word in Sanskrit today here, he goes to Latin and Greek and sees that there is a corresponding word there which has a relevance here. That's how he has been able to make out. Detailed study, philological study. Okay, he has done. Fantastic. 1,000 pages, Vedic studies. This was in their view, expressed in the highly figured, enigmatic language of the early mystics, the sense and justification of man's actual existence and his conscious or unconscious Godward effort. So, when we may feel that some man is not doing yoga, but the soul within him is doing the yoga, is unconscious yoga. And then you realize, when you come into a certain stage, you realize that your life has been a series where the soul is pushing you towards the light. One can understand that. Okay? The sense and justification of man's actual existence and his conscious or unconscious Godward effort, his conception, so paradoxical at first sight in a world which seems its very opposite, his aspiration, so impossible to a superficial view in a creature so ephemeral, weak, ignorant, limited, towards a plenitude of immortality, knowledge, power, bliss, a divine and imperishable existence. When man looks at himself here, he sees the limitation, he sees only death, falsehood, and distortion everywhere. He feels it's impossible to go up there. But it can be done. That's what Srirendra is saying. For, as a matter of fact, while the very key word of the ideal creation is a plenary self-consciousness and self-possession in the infinite soul and a perfect oneness, the key word of the creation of which we have at present experience is the very opposite. It is an original inconscience developing in life into a limited and divided self-consciousness. An original inert subjection to the drive of a blind self-existent force, developing in life into a struggle of self-conscious being to possess himself and all things, and to establish in the kingdom of this unseeing mechanic force the reign of an enlightened will and knowledge. That's yoga. And because the blind mechanic force, we know now really that it is no such thing, confronts us everywhere, initial, omnipresent, the fundamental law, the great total energy, and because the only enlightened will we know, our own, appears as a subsequent phenomenon, a result, a partial, subordinate, circumscribed, sporadic energy. The struggle seems to us at the best a very precarious and doubtful venture. The inconscient to our perceptions is the beginning and the end. The self-conscious soul seems hardly more than a temporary accident, a fragile blossom upon this great, dark, and monstrous Ashwatha tree of the universe. The Ashwatha tree is the image used in the Gita as well as the Vedic. Okay. Esho Vashvatha Sanatana. The one becoming the many is a law. So therefore, the roots are above and the branches and the flowers and leaves are below. That's the image being used. Okay. Monstrous Ashwatthatra of the universe. Or, if we suppose the soul to be eternal, it appears at least as a foreigner, an alien, and not over well treated guest, in the reign of this vast inconscience. If not an accident in the inconscient darkness, it is perhaps a mistake, a stumble downwards of the superconscious light. When man looks at the world and he has aspiration for the highest, it seems to be impossible. Okay? And if there is a soul at all, where is it? You don't see it. It is subjected to death, desire, ego, inconscience, falsehood. So it is not being well treated at all, he says.
But the Ashwatha tree is not negative.
It's not negative.
Because in Scandinavia, it's the Yggdrasil tree, which is a negative. In other words...
It's not negative. It pictures the one becoming the many.
Yes.
So this is what he's saying in the... So in the beginning, when you are in the physical world and you want to look up, it seems impossible to be able to do it.
Thank you, Ranga. Thank you all. Namaste. And see you next week.